Hey guys, welcome to another video. In this video, I'm going to show you how I made my pallet pry bar. This is a much needed metalworking project, so I hope you enjoy. Originally when I was making this video, I was going to show two methods to making this tool. One would be using a welder, and the other method would be building this same concept without a welder. Now, this video is a little long, so I'm going to have to do that in two parts. So if you don't have a welder at home and you want to make this, stay tuned because I'll have a link in the description of this video to that video. But like I said, if you have a welder and you want to make this tool, I'm going to show you how to actually make it. Now I had a small little project that I needed some pallet boards and I didn't want to mess around with a hammer and pry bar, so I decided to make this. And let me tell you, it saves so much time and effort. This is a rough drawing of the pallet pry. Now I had some pallets that I took the measurements off of, and this is what I've came up with. The two arm pieces are going to be 2 3/4 wide by 7 inches long. Now I'm going to make it 8 inches wide, so that will be the back pivot point and the angle iron. That'll be 8 inches. And I'm going to have a gap between the two pry arms, roughly 2.5 inches. Now the material that I'm using for this build is actually just scrap I had laying around, so yours can vary. For the two arm pieces, you want at least 3/8 thick. And in my case, I need a piece that is just over 7 inches long. Now for the back pivot piece, I'm going to use 1 1/4 round stock, and I'll cut that at the 8 inches. Now for the angle iron, again, I'm going to cut it at 8 inches long, and it's going to be 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches angle. And this angle iron piece serves two purposes. One, it will make this a lot sturdier, and two, it'll give us a point to mount our handle sleeve. Now what I'm using for this handle sleeve is 1 7/8 inches, and I'm going to cut that down to 6 inches. And what I have here is 1 1/4 inches, I believe. I didn't measure it, but it's 1 1/4 inches EMT, and it fits perfectly inside, so that's what I'm going to use for my handle. First thing we're going to do is mark out our arms for the pry. Now mark it at 7 inches long, or whatever you decide to mark it at, and 2 3/4. Now the reason I came up with this 2 3/4 is because the stock I'm using here is 5.5 inches wide. So if I cut that in half, I get 2 3/4. Here's a little cleaner plan so it's easier to read. Now we just finished marking these out, and we're going to move up to the back pivot point and the angle iron. So simply mark these two out at 8 inches long. Now that that is done, we are going to make our handle insert or sleeve. So we'll grab that 1 7/8 inches and we'll mark that out at 6 inches. Now you don't have to do 6 inches, but I would suggest not going below 4 inches for the sleeve, because the more handle you have in that sleeve, the stronger it'll be. Now after that, you'll have all these measurements. So you might want to pause here and just make sure you got everything. But I'm going to go ahead and grab my angle grinder and start cutting. A little tip that I like to do is I like to score the line I'm going to cut first, and then go back and do your final cut. That way the blade follows that score line. That's my little tip. After cutting all the material, I went ahead and cleaned it all up. Now to clean this up, I used a flap disc, and it does a great job taking all that rust off, the surface rust. I've also went ahead and rolled over all the edges just to clean it up. And once you have that all cut out, you should have something that kind of looks like this. Another thing I would suggest is to chamfer the arm pieces that meet the pivot point, or grinding them down 45 degrees. Now, as you see here, when you meet the two pieces up, there's a lot more surface area of the actual material touching. When we weld that, there'll be a better bond between the two. Talking about welding, we're ready to weld this thing up. So first, I welded the arms onto that back pivot point. And you're gonna want to make sure that everything is square. As you can see, I'm squaring it up right now, and make sure that you have the correct spacing. Now, before fully welding the arms on, just throw some quick tacks on, because that way you can actually move the arms still. I had to move mine up and down. Now, once you're happy with everything, throw a final weld on those two pieces, and we're ready for angle iron. Again, throw 2 quick tacks. Make sure everything's good and you're happy with that. And when you are, you can throw a final weld on that. As you can see here, I'm welding that handle sleeve on. Now, if you guys are wondering what I'm welding with, I'm actually welding with flux core. I'm not using a shielding gas, so I thought I would just throw that in if you guys were curious. Now, I did a final weld on everything, and then I actually ground my welds down. Now, some people might say this can weaken the weld, which I'm sure it will, but I like everything to be nice and smooth and kind of formed, so that's why I went ahead and ground everything down. Now, for the handle, I decided to go with the snap pin, so you can easily pull the handle out when you're storing it. Now, you can use a bolt or just a pin with a cotter pin at the other end. Kind of preference at that point, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mark it out, and then I'll drill that hole with my drill press, and this is what the final product will look like. You throw the handle in, throw the pin or bolt through, whatever you use, and you're ready to use it. Now, if you wanted to use a wooden shovel handle, you could still do that. You just might have to make the handle sleeve a little smaller, but you could still do this through pin or bolt. Now, the reason I made this head detachable is because when I'm not using it, I can just take it apart and it won't take any. After putting a couple coats of paint on, this tool is ready to use. I like to use the enamel spray paint because I find it's a lot more durable than normal spray paint. You gotta make sure you put a few coats of primer on first, and then the enamel really bonds. This pallet pry bar is a must-have if you're using pallet boards for your projects, or even just taking pallets apart to burn them. I haven't timed myself, but I bet I could take a whole pallet apart in under 5 minutes. Now, like I was saying, if you stuck around and watch how I built this, but you don't have a welder, I'm gonna have a video up showing how to make one of these without a welder. That's about it for this video. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe. And if you really enjoyed it, share it with your friends. I appreciate you guys watching. Till next time, happy building.